Hello everyone. So welcome to Business Communication course lecture series. I'm Rajini Aloka. So we are starting with our first lesson, which is Introduction to Business Communication. Mainly I'm going to give an overall and more of a general introduction to business communication in this lesson. Okay, so moving on. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to define business communication. So I'm going to talk about what business communication is. So you will be able to define what it is. Okay, explain the communication process. Then we are going to go through communication process and describe the communication methods. Okay, the next part we will be going through communication methods. Identify the importance of business communication and explain the barriers for effective communication. Okay, so these are the sections I'm going to cover today in this lesson. Okay, so moving on. So what is communication? Okay, I think you all know what communication is. So some might not know how to define it. Okay, so communication is something very something we all know. Okay, so we all been communicating since we kind of kids and all, so yes, communication is a part of human life. Okay, so communication is the act of transferring information from one person, group, or place to another. Okay, so it's basically transferring information from one person or to a group or place or to another. Okay, so this is the simplest definition we can give for communication. Each communication needs at least one sender, one recipient, and a message. So there are three components that is necessary for when it comes to communication to kind of complete this process. So there should be a sender, there should be a message, and there should be a recipient. Okay, maybe it sounds simple, but actually communication is a very complex subject. The transmission of the message from the sender to the recipient can be affected by a lot of barriers. So as I told you, we will go through these barriers at the latter part of the lesson. But just to mention that it's not just simple, there can be other barriers as well. Okay, so these include our cultural situation, emotions, location, and the medium used to communicate. For these barriers, accurate, effective, and unambiguous communication is actually extremely hard. Okay, so there might be different barriers, which we will talk in the latter part. Okay, so due to these barriers, communication can be quite hard, can become quite hard. Okay, it can't be, it will not be simple as it seems. Okay, so moving on, characteristics of communication. Communication involves a minimum of two persons. I told you at the beginning, the sender and the receiver. Communication is basically a two-way process. It is not only sending and receiving messages, but also incomplete, but it's also incomplete. It is also incomplete until the message has been understood by the receiver in the same sense. Okay, so there should be an understanding of the message as well. It's not just sending and receiving a message. The process of understanding is also necessary. The forms of communication are order, report, instruction, queries, etc. Communication is present in all human relationships, is essential in all types of management and organizations. So why we learn about communication in the business setting? Because it is essential. It is one of the essential parts when it comes to management and organizations. Okay, you need to communicate. Okay, and communication plays a vital role. It is influenced by the mood of thinking of both the sender and the receiver. Okay, so basically communication is goal-oriented and is effective when there involves a number of goals of the sender and the receiver. The main objective of communication are to build interpersonal relationships and enhance human behavior. Communication is a circular process. It starts and ends with the sender. Okay, so these are some characteristics of communication. These are very basics, okay? So we're starting with kind of an introduction. So moving on, this might be quite interesting for you. So there are 7 C's of effective communication. We're going to learn what they are. Employees spend 30% of their time on emails, meetings, presentations, conference calls, reporting, and several other activities at the workplace that involve communicating with colleagues and superiors. Okay, so when you work, you have to go through all these. Most of the times you are spending your time, mostly you are either communicating through emails or either attending to a meeting or going through a presentation of a colleague or you presenting some findings or yes. So it's mostly communication. It's as I told you, it plays a vital role. Okay, in this field, you have to be sure that your communication is the most efficient and engaging. It will increase your productivity at work. For this, follow the 7 C's of effective communication. That is, we have the 7 C's. They are clear, correct, complete, concise, concrete, coherent, and courteous. Okay, so we'll go through this. We'll discuss more after watching this video. Give me a minute. Oh, this is an advertisement. Wait. Okay. Share sound. Okay, here we go.
Principles of business communication. In order to make communication effective and engaging, there are some guiding principles that are to be considered and followed. These principles are popularly known as 7 C's of business communication. Let's see them in detail. Principle of clarity. The idea or thought that the sender wants to transmit must be clear enough to be understood by the receiver. Clarity of thoughts and ideas enhances the meaning of the message. Avoid ambiguous words and jargons. Use short and effective sentence and paragraphs. Avoid excessive use of infinitive. Put appropriate examples, illustrations, and visual aids wherever applicable. Let's take an example. This mail reads as, "Dear Samantha, we will have to meet urgently as our new client wants some changes in the product specifications. We may also need help from the designing team." There are a lot of things that go wrong in this mail. Samantha might not even know which new client Varun is talking about. There can be more than one new client at a time. Furthermore, there is also ambiguity in the second line as to what is expected from Samantha. Has she to call someone from the designing team is also not clear. Let's get this mail improvised. Dear Samantha, early this morning I received a call from Mr. Venkatesh of Shanky's Private Limited. We had already finalized all details with them earlier, but he has been requesting to accept some changes in their product specifications. I have also called for Jay Kumar from designing team so that we all can discuss on this, and we wouldn't want to lose out on Chenki's Private Limited as they are a valued client for us. We shall meet up at my desk immediately after lunchtime to discuss this further. This email has all the information Samantha needs to know. She can be well prepared for the meeting. Good one. The next principle we have, principle of correctness. Correct message has a great impact on the audience. Before sending any message, the transmitter must assure that it contains correct facts, it is transmitted at the correct time, and it is of the correct style. Any mistake in the subject matter of communication can create a bad impression and confuse the reader. Check accuracy of figures, facts, and words. The message should be exact, correct, and well timed. Check your message from grammatical and linguistic viewpoints and send your message in the correct style. Let's take an example. Miss Aisha, in regard with our telephonic conversation today, I'm mailing you the plan for the foundation work of the project. Hope the 1 week deadline is okay with you and your team. There were 2 glaring spelling errors in this email. Conversation was spelled conservation and week was spelled week. Though these are minor errors, they could seriously impact the credibility of your professionalism and the brand image of the organization you represent. Therefore, it is absolutely necessary to check all your spellings and prefixes before you send an email or SMS, especially if it is going to a client or a vendor outside your company. Principle of completeness. Completeness of facts is vitally necessary in business communication. The message should convey all facts required by the audience. Incomplete communication can lead the receiver to misinterpret the message. A complete message has a lot of benefits. It's cost saving as no additional cost is incurred in conveying any extra message. Complete communication leaves no questions in the mind of the receiver. Complete communication helps in better decision making by the receivers as they get all the desired information. It persuades the audience as well. Let's take an example. Roshan sends a message to all. Let us meet tomorrow to discuss the product launch event. Please be there on time. There is no mention of the time of the meeting scheduled for or the location, and neither is there any set agenda. The recipients of the email would have to write back or call back to Roshan to clarify.
Stuck poop
Right,
makes
there's
thin
an
women
advertisement.
look fat. Can't go? Do this to clear out.
Okay.
Let's get this completed. Hi all. Let us meet tomorrow at 11 a.m. at conference room number 3 to discuss the product launch event. We will have to decide the keynote speakers and complete the event invite draft tomorrow. Please be there on time. This sounds complete. The next principle we have is principle of conciseness. Brevity in expression effectively wins the attention of the reader. A message must include everything necessary and exclude anything unnecessary. However, conciseness must not be attained at the cost of principles of completeness or clarity. Include only relevant facts and avoid repetition. Organize the message well. Concise communication provides short and essential message in limited words to the audience. Concise message is more appealing and comprehensible to the audience. Let's take an example. We have a mail here which reads, Hi Suzanne, I think we need to talk about the CSR campaign. I mean the one which we need to do as a quarterly exercise. I think it is a great way of enhancing our brand image. Basically, it would just be a visit to an orphanage, but we can sort of do other things too. For instance, we could take the kids out for a short trip to a nearby park or zoo. Let us sit and talk tomorrow. This mail is full of fillers and extended phrases, wherein Jennifer could have finished this mail in just 2 sentences. Let's concise this. Hi Suzanne, I need to discuss the quarterly CSR campaign with you. Let us take the orphanage kids out this time to a nearby park or zoo instead of just visiting them. This will enhance our brand image. We'll talk in detail tomorrow. This sounds concise. Next we have is the principle of concreteness. Concreteness means being specific, definite, and vivid rather than vague and general. The message must be concrete or exact so that the receiver can read it easily or hear clearly. There should be fairness, openness, and straightness in the message to be communicated. Use specific facts and figures, use action or active verbs, select vivid, lively, and striking words. Tell exactly what you want to tell and avoid irrelevant information. Let's take an example. Hilltop Resort is the best resort. Do come to us on your next holiday. This is a vague ad message. It is made to sound like just another resort advertisement among 100 others. The audience will never remember this ad message. There are no concrete details to take away from this message.
Okay, another advertisement coming. Wait. Okay.
Let's do this ad in a concrete manner. Hilltop Resort is the jewel of the Western Hills. Take a break from your work. Escape from life's chaos and stress. Relax and rejuvenate yourself at Hilltop. Go back fresh and energized. This ad gives you the visualizing details. Next we have is principle of courtesy. Courtesy demands a considerate and friendly behavior towards others. Courtesy in message implies the message should be showing the sender's expressions as well as should respect the receiver. A courteous message is positive and focused at the audience. The sender of the message should be sincerely polite, judicious, reflective, and enthusiastic. Make use of terms showing respect for the receiver of the message. Answer the messages promptly. Apologize sincerely for any omission or mistake and thank generously for any kind of favor. Let's take an example here too. Hello Rajat, I really do not appreciate your IT team ignores the request of my team alone. My team is an important function in this organization too, and we have our own IT requirements. Can you ensure that your team responds promptly to my team's request hereon? Regards, Samir Shah. This email is judgmental and disrespectful. Rajat might now order his team not to respond to Samir's team's requirements entirely. Now let's get this done with a little of courtesy. Hi Rajat, I understand that the IT team is swamped with work and gets requests from every department in the organization. My team, however, is working on a high priority project, and I would greatly appreciate if you could ask your team members to respond to my team's queries promptly and help us complete this project on time. Please do let me know if you need anything from me. Regards, Samir Shah. As a result of this polite request, it is likely that Rajat will feel appreciated and important, and he will definitely ask his team to help Samir's team. Works get done and everybody's happy too. Next, principle of consideration. Consideration means preparing every message keeping the receiver in mind. While encoding the message, the sender should try to put himself in the place of the receiver. The desires, problems, emotions, feelings, and possible reactions of the receiver should be considered duly. Give the receiver's situation's highest priority while drafting the message. Use you viewpoint instead of I or we viewpoint. Avoid insensitive words like you have failed to. Show the reader benefit or interest in the message. Emphasize on positive, pleasant facts and show optimism towards your audience and emphasize on what is possible. Consideration implies stepping into the shoes of the other person. Effective communication must take the audience into consideration, that is, the audience viewpoints, background, mindset, education level, and so on. Modify your words in the message to suit the audience needs while making your message complete. That's all with the 7 C's of communication, which are also the principles of communication.
Okay, so that was presented with a lot of details. So I think you all understood why it is important to follow these principles and how you can be a better communicator through this. Okay, so moving on to the next section, we have communication process. You can see the image here. So this is an image of the communication process. Okay, so communication is a cyclic process that starts with the sender and ends with the sender in the form of feedback. The communication process consists of some steps where each step constitutes of essence of effective communication. Let's see. So as the image showed, these are the elements of effective communication. First, we have the sender. A sender is basically a person who starts the communication by transmitting or sending a message. The sender is the initiator of the message that needs to be transmitted. After having created the information, idea, etc., the sender encodes it in such a manner that can be easy to understand for the receiver. Okay, so you have the message, you have to do some encoding so the receiver will understand it. Okay, then the message. The message is the main subject of communication. Without a message, the whole communication is meaningless. A message contains a thought, idea, picture, symbol, report, or order to gestures and postures. The message is considered the heart of the communication. A message can be verbal, written, and spoken, or non-verbal, pictorial, symbolic, or gestures. Okay, so there's verbal communication and non-verbal communication. So the message can be either of these. Okay, then we have encoding. Putting the targeted message, verbal or non-verbal, depending upon the situation, time, space, and nature of the message to be sent into an appropriate medium is called encoding. So you put the message, you select what is the medium I'm going to choose to send this message, okay, and encode the message. That is called encoding. Encoding is the most important step in the communication process. A wrong and inappropriate encoding may change the true intent of the communication. For an example, if you are in a very formal situation where you need to send a message to maybe a work colleague or one of your customers when you're working, so instead of writing a formal email, you choose to send an informal text message. Okay, so that can be kind of problematic. Okay, so it shows that your professionalism is less. So yes, so choosing the medium is very important. therefore. Then we have channel. Channel refers to the mode the message flows or is transmitted through. The message is transmitted over a channel that links the receiver with the sender. The message may be written or oral, and it may be transmitted through a computer, cell phone, telephone, television, or memorandum. So these are the channels, some examples for channels. Okay. Then moving on, we have the receiver. The receiver is the person, group, or community for who the message is meant. He or she may be a reader, viewer, or listener. The receiver needs to comprehend the message sent in the best possible manner such that the true intent of the communication is attained. Any negligence on behalf of the receiver may make the communication useless. As the sender, the receiver is also the important factor of communication process as it is the other end of the process. The receiver should be in fit condition when receiving the message. Then we have decoding. Converting the sent message into intelligible language is called decoding. Generally, it means comprehending the message. Decoding means understanding the message. After receiving the message, the receiver interprets it and tries to understand it in the best possible manner. Then comes the feedback. It is the ultimate aspect of communication. It is the response of the receiver to get the message sent by the sender. Feedback is necessary to ensure that the message has been successfully encoded, sent, and decoded. It is the key to making communication effective and purposeful. Okay, so this is basically the process of communication process. We have sender message encoding channel, receiver decoding feedback. Okay, so moving on, how to improve your communication skills. So one of the main intentions of this course is for you to improve your communication skills in a business setting. Okay, so there are a number of things you can do in order to improve your communication skills. These include actively listen. This means paying attention and truly listening. So one of the main ways is when it comes to communication, if you are like not listening, not paying attention to someone who's speaking or telling you something, that means the communication won't work. Okay, so one of the things you can do is active listening. This is one of the skills you should improve when it comes to improving your communication skills. Body language. This means being aware of your body language and how this comes across to other people, and also being aware of the other person's body language. For an example, if you are in a meeting like this, okay, your body language shows for the one who's presenting, or yes, so the one who's doing the meeting, the superior or whatever, they get the message, they get the idea that you are bored or not interested or not paying attention. Okay, so body language plays a very important role when it comes to nonverbal communications. Okay, so ask questions and provide feedback. This ensures engagement from you as the receiver of the message. Okay, so if you are listening to someone who's communicating, or who's someone who's presenting, someone who's telling something, some information, so you need to ensure and show that you are engaged by asking questions, providing feedback, asking questions to clarify. Okay, so make eye contact. This is very important. So when you're speaking, mainly if you're presenting in front of a group of people, if you are looking somewhere else, that means you are kind of nervous. Okay, so you can make eye contact. That will make you a better communicator. Okay, be clear and to the point. So we talked about the clarity, the importance of clarity, why it is important to be clear when it comes to communicating. Take notes, proofread before sending anything in writing. Yes, that is very important. Okay, in business communication setting, that is very important, that because that also shows your professionalism. Okay, so if you are sending an email to someone with a lot of grammar errors or spelling errors, that shows that you are not professional enough. Okay, so yes, so you need to proofread. Use a strong, confident speaking voice, particularly important when you are doing a presentation. Avoid using filler words like all filler words should be avoided where possible, if possible. Okay, so especially when it comes to presenting or something. So if you're always like using filler words all the time, that shows that you're not prepared or you're not sure about what you're saying. Okay. Then we have be intentional about your nonverbal communication. Make an effort to display positive body language. You should use body language to support your verbal communication. For example, if you feel confused or unhappy. So body language, your whole body can be used for nonverbal communication. Okay, and people can interpret a lot of things from your body language. Okay, so mainly if you are in a business setting, as I told you, make sure that if you want to show interest, you show interest through your body language as well. Okay, so yes, we have a video to watch. Let's watch this. Oh, that video is not available. That's fine. We are moving to business communication. Give me a second.
Basics and important.
Okay, so let's watch this video. Before that, I'll show you the questions you need to answer. Okay, I'm giving you a set of questions to answer while watching this video. Okay, so the first question is, how is talking different from communicating? Second one, why is communication a two-way process? What is the speaker's role? What is the receiver's role? What are the 7 C's of communication? What is a common barrier to communication? What do you need to improve to develop your communication skills? This is more like a general sum up version of what we already did. So I'm going to do a listening task based on that. Okay, so take a photo of this or something so you can check the answers while watching. Okay, so here we go.
Communication, basics and importance. In this video, we will learn what communication is. We will also learn the importance of communication and ways to improve our communication skills to have better personal and professional relationships. Talking is an integral part of living. We talk to our family members, friends, people at work, and even strangers. But do we really communicate with them? Let's see how communication is different from talking. Talking simply refers to speaking words and sentences. Sometimes the message is understood, sometimes it is not. Communicating is one step further in the process. It is the sharing of information between 2 or more people to reach a common understanding. Communication is a two-way process. It needs a sender or a speaker and a receiver or a listener. The speaker's role is to speak clearly, while the listener's role is to pay attention to the speaker. However, quite often people focus more on what they want to say rather than listen to others. Now, before we understand the importance of communication, let's imagine a day without speaking to anyone. How would you find it? Difficult? Boring? Communication is the basis of all relationships. We communicate with others for many reasons. For example, when you can't find your clothes, you reach out to your mother or father. We also need to talk to others to share our joys and sorrows with them. At work, we talk to our co-workers to share ideas, exchange information, and seek help from them. Without communication, our life would come to a standstill. We communicate not just verbally, but also non-verbally through our body language and facial expressions. Another mode of communication is written, which includes letters, emails, notes, etc. To make sure we talk and write effectively and that our audience gets the message, we must follow the 7 C's of communication. Let's see what these are. Be clear. When writing or speaking to someone, be clear about your message. Think what your purpose is in communicating with another person. If you're not sure, then your audience won't be either. Be concise. Keep your message short and to the point. Make sure your message is concrete and gives your audience a clear picture of what you want to say. Be correct. Correct communication is error-free and uses language that is understood by others. Be coherent. Coherent communication is logical. It means that all points are connected to the main topic and follow the correct order or sequence. Your message should be complete. After reading or listening to your message, others should know what is to be done. Finally, be courteous. Use respectful and polite language at all times. Now, let's look at a conversation to see how an unclear message can confuse others. Hello, doctor. My right leg has been paining since yesterday. All right, let me check. Well, you have got sciatica. I'll write down some analgesics for your inflammation and proceed from there based on your body's response. What? I don't understand. Is it serious? Will I be fine? Am I going to die? You'll be fine. Just take these medicines. All right. I don't know what he's saying. I think I should speak to some other doctor. I don't trust this doctor. Do you think this communication was effective? What made it fail? There are many barriers to communication, and these may occur at any stage in the communication process. They lead to misunderstanding and wasted time. The use of overcomplicated or unfamiliar language is a common barrier to communication. Here, the doctor used difficult medical terms that the patient did not understand. This left him confused, nervous, and unsure. Our emotions also affect our communication. How we interpret what we hear is affected by the thoughts that come to our mind when we are listening. For example, if your boss asks if the task that was assigned to you has been completed, and you interpret it as the boss blaming you for not completing the task, you are likely to respond in anger. However, if you interpret the message as your boss just wanting to know the status, you are likely to feel less angry and defensive. Distraction and lack of interest also affects understanding. We filter information based on what we want to hear. For example, when our manager is assigning work, we only listen to those which we need to do. Remember, developing effective communication skills means improving both your speaking and listening skills. Even if you are not born with these skills, you can develop them by paying attention to what and how you say things and listening attentively to others.
Okay, let's check the answers. Okay, so here are the answers. How is talking different from communicating? Talking, this is, the spellings are wrong, Talking. Talking is passing on a message to others, while communicating means sharing of information with two or more people to reach a common understanding. Why is communication a two-way process? Because it needs a speaker and a receiver. What is the speaker's role? The speaker's role is to give information. What is the receiver's role? The receiver's role is to listen to the information. Listen and understand, actually. What are the 7 C's of communication? Clear, concise, concrete, correct, coherent, complete, courteous. Then we have, what is a common barrier to communication? The use of difficult words and unfamiliar language. Yes, other distractions, there were a lot. Yes. What do you need to improve to develop your communicating skills? You need to develop both speaking and listening skills. Okay. So moving back to the lesson. So that is a little activity to kind of, yes, overall go through what we did and to kind of see whether you have understood up to now. Okay, so we are moving forward. Business communication. Business communication is goal-oriented. The rules, regulations, and policies of a company have to be communicated to people within and outside the organization. Business communication is regulated by certain rules and norms. In early times, business communication was limited to paperwork, telephone calls, etc. But now with advent of technology, we have cell phones, video conferencing, emails, satellite communication to support business communication. Effective business communication helps in building goodwill of an organization. Okay, as I told earlier, when it comes to businesses communication plays a huge role. Okay, so moving on. Purpose of communication when it comes to a business setting. For instruction. The instructive function unvarying and importantly deals with the commanding nature. It is more or less of directive nature. Okay. Under this, the communicator transmits with necessary directives and guidance to the next level so as to enable them to accomplish his particular task. In this, instructions basically flow from top to the lower level. So instructions will be given in order to complete a task or something. Instructions should be given. Okay, so one purpose of communication in a business setting is to give instructions or guidelines. For integration, it is consolidated function under which integration of activities is endeavored. The integration function of communication mainly involves to bring about interrelationship among the various functions of business organization. It helps in the unification of different management functions. So, a second. Yes, so integration, I checked the singular word so you can understand better. It says anukalanaya. Okay. Yes. So for information, the purpose or function of communication in an organization is to inform the individual or group about a particular task or company policies and procedures, etc. Top management informs policies to the lower level through the middle level. In turn, the lower level informs the top level and the reaction through the middle level. Okay, here's this hierarchical setting in business settings mostly. Yes. So information can flow vertically, horizontally, and diagonally across the organization. Becoming informed or inform others is the main purpose of communication. Okay. For information purposes, we have to communicate in business setting. Then for evaluation, examination of activities to form an idea or judgment of the worth of task is achieved through communication. Communication is a tool to appraise the individual or team, their contribution to the organization. Evaluating one's own inputs or others' output or some ideological scheme demands an adequate and effective communication process. So not only for communication, when it comes to business setting, we need to communicate to evaluation purposes. Okay, so moving on, we have for direction. Communication is necessary to issue directions by the top management or manager to the lower level. Employee can perform better when he is directed by his senior. Directing others may be communicated either orally or in writing. An order may be common order, request order, or implied order. For teaching, the importance of personal safety on the job has been greatly recognized. A complete communication process is required to teach and educate workers about personal safety on the jobs. This communication helps the workers to avert accidents, risk, etc., and avoid cost procedures and etc. So teaching is another purpose, to teach, to educate. For influencing, a complete communication process is necessary in influencing others or being influenced. The individual having potential to influence others can easily persuade others. It implies the provision of feedback which tells the effect of communication. The image building. A business enterprise cannot isolate from the rest of the society. There is interrelationship and interdependence between the society and an enterprise operating in the society. Goodwill and confidence are necessarily created among the public. It can be done by communication with the different media, which has to project the image of the firm in the society. Through the effective external communication system, an enterprise has to inform the society about its goals, activities, progress, and social responsibilities. So it's very important, the communication, to build effective communication within businesses, because it kind of helps to build the image of the business. For employees orientation, when a new employee enters into the organization at the time, he or she will be unknown to the organization programs, policies, cultures, etc. Communication helps to make people acquainted with the co-employees, superior, and with the policies, objectives, rules, and regulations of the organization. Okay. So for employee orientation, for when a new employee comes into a business setting, to introduce everything. Okay, so orientation. So these are the main purposes of business communication, communication in a business setting. Okay, so before moving to the barriers, we'll do another activity. Wait. Okay, we are moving to the second activity, which is watch the video and answer the given question. The question is, what are the 5 rules of business communication? Okay, you have to watch it and answer this question. There's one question. You have to check what are the 5 rules of business communication. This is an advertisement. Right?
How to improve your business communication. Here are 5 rules for business communication from the book Business Without the Bullshit, 49 Secrets and Shortcuts You Need to Know. Pinpoint the purpose behind the communication. Communication is information with a purpose. Therefore, it is possible to communicate well only if you are clear about the purpose of the communication. Therefore, before you initiate any communication at work, ask yourself the following 3 questions and answer them accordingly. 1. What decision am I seeking? 2. Whom do I want to make this decision with? 3. Is this the right time to ask that person? The clarity in your answers to these questions indicates that your communication is likely to be well received. Choose a medium that's convenient for the decision maker. It was famously said in the 20th century, the medium is the message. Always use the medium or media that demands the least mental and emotional effort from the decision maker. For example, never ask for a face-to-face meeting if the decision you want can be effectively handled through a quick exchange of text or emails. Similarly, never use email when the decision requires the personal touch of a face-to-face interaction. If you are using email to avoid feeling uncomfortable, such as when delivering bad news, you're choosing a medium based on your needs rather than those of the decision maker. Simplify words and sentences. The business world is complicated enough. Why use a $5 word when 5-cent ones will do the job better? Try to simplify your language as much as possible. It's a myth if you believe that just by using complicated jargons, you can please the listener. Replace business cliches with plain language. Many business folk believe that their communications will seem more businesslike and profound if they pepper them with business cliches, buzzwords, and bizblabs. Such people are mistaken. For example, high-tech marketing documents frequently describe products as cutting edge, industry leading, 3rd generation, 4th generation, leading edge, state-of-the-art, 2.0, and next generation. Even if it is not relevant, none of these terms mean anything. Not really. Far from making it seem more exciting, bizblab marks the person who uses it as, at best, an unoriginal thinker and, at worst, a fool. Replace technical jargon with everyday words. This rule applies only if you're an expert attempting to communicate with a non-expert, or rather a layman. When people who share similar responsibilities or profile, or most of the time from the similar industries communicate, jargons are useful because it allows burst of communication without an explanation of terminologies used. However, jargon prevents non-experts or laymen from understanding what you're talking about, which makes it difficult or impossible for them to stay in the same pace. If you want non-experts or laymen on board, replace jargon with commonly understood terms. If you have any additional suggestions or
Okay, let's check the answers. So, what are the 5 rules of business communication? Pinpoint the purpose behind the communication. Choose a medium that's convenient for the decision maker. Simplify words and sentences. Replace business cliches with plain language. Replace technical jargon with everyday words. Okay. Most of these are for the purpose of being clarity. Yes. Okay, so moving on. We are moving to the next section, which is barriers in business communication. For any kind of communication to be successful, it is essential that the receiver attributes the same meaning to the message as intended by the sender of the message. But all acts of communication are not perfect or successful. At times, some meaning is lost as the message encounters various barriers along its passage between the sender and the receiver. Such barriers may arise at any of the stages through which a message passes during the process of communication. This is also called miscommunication. Some of the common problems that lead to the failure of communication are noise, cultural differences, complexity of subject matter, personal biases, semantic problems. Semantic means grammar-related problems. Okay, the sentence-wise, yes. Socio-psychological barriers, filtering information, overload, poor retention, poor listening, goal conflicts, slanting, inferring, etc. Okay, so let's move on. So these are the barriers of communication can be classified into following broad categories. Okay, there are 6 broad categories given here. Physical or environmental barriers, physiological or biological barriers, semantic or language barriers, personal barriers, emotional or perceptional barriers, and cultural barriers. So we will be talking about each section separately. So moving to physical or environmental barriers. Physical barriers are those barriers which are caused due to some technical defects in the media used for communication and or due to certain disturbances in the surrounding environment. Often the term noise is used as a blanket term to refer to the physical barriers in general. But noise in its literal sense is also one of the factors that give rise for physical barriers during the process of communication. Besides noise, wrong selection of medium, lack of acoustics, poor lighting, frequent movement of hands, fiddling with a pen, or even serving of tea during an important conversation. All of these are also responsible for creating physical barriers in the communicating process. So I think this is very much comprehensive. So physical barriers or environmental barriers are some things that will happen in the environment while we are communicating that will lessen the understanding of the message, or that will kind of distract distract the receiver from understanding the message, or even the sender from communicating the message properly. Okay, so yes. So moving on, physiological barriers. Physiological barriers are related to a person's health or fitness. These may arise due to disabilities that may affect the physical capability of the sender or the receiver. For example, poor eyesight. Yeah, we don't use these words. Hearing impact, uncontrolled body movements, etc. So a person with some physical challenges will find it hard to send or even to receive the message. So it's we should actually think what is the best media to communicate. Okay, how to communicate and how to communicate this message properly. So we have to consider all these factors. Okay, so yes. Moving on, semantic or language barriers. Semantics is the systematic study of meaning of words. Thus, the semantic barriers are barriers related to language. Such barriers are problems that arise during the process of encoding or decoding the message into words and ideas respectively. Both the oral and written communication are based on word symbols which are ambiguous in nature. Words or symbols may be used in several ways and may have several meanings. Unless the receiver knows the context, He may interpret the words or symbols according to his own level of understanding and may thus misinterpret the message. So misinterpretations can happen with the word choice or the if we use as the video said, the usage of jargons, okay, so slang words. Yeah, the receiver might not understand these words, so might have a different understanding. They might mean it differently. So there might be a miscommunication. So semantic or language can be barriers as well. Okay, so moving on, personal barriers. Communication is interpersonal in nature. Thus, there are certain barriers that are directly linked to the persons involved in the communication process. The sender and the receiver, which influence the accurate transfer of the message. These are called personal barriers. Personal barriers have to do with the age, education, interest, and needs or intentions that differ from person to person. In any business organization, the attitude of the superiors and the subordinates play a vital role in determining the success of the communication. If the superiors have a hostile attitude, then there are chances that they may filter the information or manipulate the message, sometimes intentionally in order to achieve certain selfish motives. Many superiors are not open to suggestions and feedback, as they presume that their subordinates are not capable of advising them. Also, they often tend to keep too busy with work and do not pay much attention to communication. Due to this, the downward flow of information within the organization is badly affected, and this in turn leads to poor performance. Okay, so personal barriers in the sense the attitudinal wise. Okay, so attitudinal, the attitudes different people have may cause when it comes to a team setting like a business that will affect the whole team. Okay, so yes, how those things, the attitudes can be a barrier in proper communication. Yes. Then emotional and perceptional barriers. Emotional and perceptional barriers are closely associated with personal barriers. Personal barriers, yes, this kind of actually goes along with personal barriers. Personal barriers arise from motives and attitudes, whereas emotional and perceptional barriers have an added dimension that includes sentiments and emotions as well. If the receiver does not evaluate the information with an open mind, objectively, his judgment evaluation would be colored with his biases and his emotions. So we have different biases. As people, we have different biases. There are different ways we look at things. So yes, in a business setting, if you look at things too subjectively, okay, take everything super personal, then it can actually affect the communication process. And this would interfere with the exact transfer of information and cause misinterpretation. Such a barrier may be emerged at the time of encoding the message, or enthusiasm on the part of the sender may lead to invest his message with meaning or meanings which he may actually not have intended to. Indolence, apathy, or tendency to procrastinate either on the part of the sender or the receiver also leads to withholding of important information, thus creating a barrier. Extreme emotions of euphoria, excitement, anger, stress, depression, etc. also get in the way of effective communication. Also, these factors may create biases in the mind of the sender or the receiver. Okay, so emotions can be a barrier as well. Okay, if you are sending a message, if you are too angry, if you always get stressed, and yes, so that can affect the whole communication system in a team. Okay, finally, we have cultural barriers. Cultural differences give rise to a great deal of complexity in the encoding and decoding of messages, not only because of the difference in languages, but also because of plenty of culture-specific assumptions at work in mind of the sender as well as receiver. People belonging to different cultures may attach different meanings to words, symbols, gestures, and behaviors, or they may perceive each other's social values, body language, attitude and space distancing, and time, social behavior and manners, etc. The entire culture in general very differently depending upon their own standard attitudes, customs, prejudices, opinions, behavioral norms, their own distinct culture. Thus, cultural barriers arise when people belonging to different cultures insist on preserving their cultural identities and at times judge the other cultures as inferior to their own. So there might be cultural barriers arising in a workplace if you think that your culture is superior than the others and you want other people, if you are not understanding of other people's cultures and traditions, if you yes, so that can be a barrier as well. Okay, so we have another video to watch.
Okay, go ahead and kick off your shoes. You know, there are no frogs on my dad's farm. That is to say, he believes there are no frogs. And there's no doubt that our beliefs are highly influenced by our perceptions. We'll believe it when we see it or hear it. My dad's been hearing impaired for a very long time, nearly 40 years, and there are some sounds he doesn't hear. One of those sounds is frog song. If he doesn't hear them, he's not going to look for them. And if he doesn't look for them, he won't see them. And if he doesn't see them, for him, they're not there. Oh, he used to have frogs. Other people have frogs. Frogs are really good to have around. They eat mosquitoes, and who doesn't love that? It's really kind of unfair that my dad doesn't get to have frogs. Hearing loss has taken other things from my dad. The most obvious is the ability to have a conversation. Conversation on the phone, conversation in the car, in the church fellowship hall, around the dinner table. You get the idea. Conversation is where we learn to communicate. We learn to build community. Webster defines communication as a sharing of ideas. Sharing is a two-way street. We speak, we listen. My dad no longer has those conversational skills that he once had. Oh, now don't get me wrong. My dad can do anything. He can fix anything. Well, anything except hearing loss, that he can't even see. Hearing loss is, in fact, an invisible handicap. No wheelchair, no white cane, just tiny little hearing aids. My dad can't hear, but some people won't hear. Communications majors today are being prepared for careers that utilize skills in marketing and writing and journalism and public relations and promotions. Listening is not even on the curriculum. But in order for communication to occur, we have to not only speak in a manner to be heard and understood, but also listen with the intent to truly resonate with our conversation partner. Now, when we share ideas, that does not mean we have to agree with everything we hear. It does not mean our conversation partner has to agree with everything they hear. It does not mean we need to have totally harmonious convictions to converse. But we do have to share. If I want to communicate to my dad that there are frogs on the farm, and I say something like, "There are frogs on the farm. Watch, I'll go catch one. Oh, look, see, here's a frog. There are frogs on the farm." What was my intent? To prove him wrong. There was certainly no sharing going on in that line of attack. A better way to communicate would be to ask questions to clarify what I don't understand. When I absolutely know there are frogs on the farm, I should ask my dad, "Why do you think the frogs are gone?" At that point, he might share with me an idea he has about how global warming has affected even his farm in northeastern Indiana. Or he might say he doesn't really know, but he sure hasn't heard them for a while. Now we're getting somewhere. Now I know which of his perceptions has influenced his belief about the frogs. Perception, the state of being or the act of becoming aware of one's surroundings through the senses. Through his sense of hearing, my dad has become aware of the lack of frogs on the farm. Now, we have perceptions in conversation as well. One day at the Target store, I had to intervene at the customer service desk. Two people were talking. One was hearing impaired, the other was buried in her computer. At the end of the exchange, one sighed and walked away happily. The other also sighed. It was just a sigh, but it was not the same sigh, and it did not have the same meaning because these two women had very different perceptions of the conversation. Now, hearing loss is only one barrier to communication. Another one is listening. In a perfect world, we have a speaker and a listener. The speaker is using short, concise sentences and expressing herself in an understandable way. The listener is listening. He's paying attention. He's understanding in a perfect world. But what if we have a listener who is only listening to form a response? He's not communicating. He's not taking in the meaning being conveyed by the spoken word, nor can he. He is instead imposing his own meaning on the words, and as such can't possibly understand what's been said. Or what if we have a speaker who is only speaking to hear her own voice? In that case, I suggest using a camera or a mirror to get the full effect. That's not conversation either. We see this when we ask a question and the response doesn't match. We walk away from that saying, what just happened? George Bernard Shaw said the single greatest misconception about communication is that it has taken place. When speaking to be understood, if at all possible, interact face to face. Make eye contact and take turns. In the deaf community, if we're not looking at one another, we're not talking to one another. Second, use short, clear sentences and questions. Questions guarantee that our message has gotten through. Have you ever had a conversation where you make a plan and then you get stood up later with, "Oh, you were serious about that?" Ask questions. Guarantee that you've been understood. Third, honesty. Use it every time. Finally, speak distinctly. Enunciate. Remember, you might be speaking to someone who has hearing impairment or depression or low self-esteem. These are all invisible barriers to listening. Hearing loss very often steals that final consonant of a word, and that missed word draws concentration from the next 4 or 5 words, and the whole sentence is gone. At that point, the hearing impaired individual simply smiles and nods. The one with depression might be distracted from the conversation with thoughts of self-harm. Muffled speech could sound very much to him like his own thoughts sound. The one with low self-esteem might be so excited that he's actually having a conversation that he totally misses the communication aspect. A clear, distinct voice will be heard better by everybody. Listening with intent. Remember, we want to hear what our conversation partner is saying. We value them. They need to know this. Listen to the words, the intonation, the emotion that you can hear in their voice and see on your face if you're paying attention. Second, find common ground, even if you don't agree with the overall statement. I disagree with the idea that toddlers should snack on dry dog food. However, I agree with the idea that dry dog food is not going to harm a toddler. Once we've established something we can agree upon, we're more likely to have a sharing of ideas. I could then ask, what is it about the dog food or the toddler that makes this a good combination? Then maybe talk about alternative snacks, the nutritional values of each. Simply refuting someone's statement, no child should ever be forced to eat dog food, might miss the point of the story. Perhaps the child was giving the dog treats and the dog wanted to share. But that's a story for another time. We have other barriers to communication. The need to be right, the need to blame someone, the need to argue. And while these are truly barriers to communication, are they truly needs? No, not really. What we truly need to keep in mind is that our community is built on relationships, and relationships are built on the ability to share ideas. Leonardo da Vinci dreamed of flight. Orville and Wilbur built a plane on that same dream, that shared idea. Boeing Corporation has expanded on the idea even further. Together, people can accomplish, well, the sky truly is the limit. Today, however, people are intentionally keeping themselves separate because they're not listening. Oh, there's a lot of talk going on. Social media revolves around posts being thrown up on any wall available, and then the poster walks away. That's a troll. If we remember our literature, trolls live under bridges, bridges built by others, bridges that help people get to where they are going. Trolls hinder progress. Don't feed the trolls. Genuine communication establishes community, and community is the basic building block of our society. Without this genuine communication, community starts to fall apart, and our society is not far behind. So, how do we change the way communication is done? One person at a time. And that person is you. You decide how you are going to speak, how you are going to listen, how you are going to respond. Are you going to speak with compassion or self-importance? Are you going to respond with demands or compromise? And I don't mean compromise your beliefs or your convictions. These make you the person you are. But how these ideas are presented will affect how well they are received, how successfully they're shared. We live in the greatest country in the world, we really do. Now, that's not to say we don't have some issues to work on, but we have the freedom to disagree. We have the freedom to share our ideas, even if we're separated by a great chasm. The first step to building a bridge over that chasm is better communication. Do I believe that better communication will solve all our issues? Maybe not today, but I have hope in a future where better communication does draw us into closer community. Somebody just needs to take that first step. Be a somebody. When God met Moses at the burning bush, he asked him to take off his shoes, and then he had Moses' total attention. Well, I'm not God, but thanks for your attention. Good night.
Okay, so we are going to do a little comprehension activity. Okay, here's a passage, a comprehension passage for you to read. Okay, we are going to read this first. Even with today's overall focus on technology, business phone calls or phone calls intended to discuss deals, agreements, and any other information of professional significance are important and often utilized, as they allow experts from a number of different companies and organizations to completely understand one another. Like many other aspects of business, phone calls feature quite a few variables and elements that should be considered by those involved. Failing to consider these variables and elements can inhibit a business phone call's effect and negatively impact business relationships. First and foremost, a seller dials and starts a business phone call while a receiver answers a business phone call. Starting a business phone call might appear to be as easy as dialing a phone number, but there's a bit more to the process than that. The caller should assure that the call is taking place in an appropriate time for the receiver, that there is well-defined subject matter to discuss, and that this subject matter is outlined. Well-defined subject matter could be anything from a potential deal to agreement, specifics, and even an inquiry as to how a client is feeling and what he or she needs. Outlines of important discussion points or reminders of topics that should be talked about during conversations help make business phone calls as meaningful and useful as possible. With that said, business phone calls can begin with some light-hearted small talk or non-official talk that's intended to offer a break from official conversation to build trust and emphasize a relationship before proceeding into matters of professional concern. Receiving a business phone call is similarly straightforward. If one is unable to talk at a given moment, the generally accepted practice is to answer the call and request that the caller phone back later, or that he or she receive a return call at a later time. Other than that, one simply answers, remains courteous and attentive, and allows the caller to guide the conversation. It's recommended that one take notes during business phone calls. Exchanging information or providing contact details, pertinent figures or statistics or other requested data is a common business phone call practice that can be started by the caller or the receiver. To exchange information, one simply asks the individual on the other end of the phone if he or she believes it would be mutually beneficial or helpful for all parties involved to swap specified information. If an agreement is made, the received information should be taken note of. If something that the seller says isn't completely understood or isn't clear, one can politely ask him or her to repeat what was said. This request can be as simple as, "Can you please repeat that?" or "Sorry, I didn't catch you." Ending a business phone call or the process of hanging up and bringing conversation to a close is usually automatic and occurs when both callers feel that the dialogue's purposes have been fulfilled. If a business phone call has to be ended early because something unforeseen has come up, the caller should ask if the dialogue can continue at a later time. Okay, so this is about the procedure of a business phone call and some ethics related to that. Okay, so what I want you to do first is I want you to go through this. Okay, one more time. I will scroll down a little bit. Okay, so go through this one more time and check for the difficult words and their meanings. Okay, so we'll do it, take time and do this. And then I want you to write a small summary. What is the main idea of this whole comprehension passage? At least 5 sentences would do. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, 5 to 6 sentences would do. The summary of each paragraph, you can take it to 1 paragraph. Okay, what is the main idea of each paragraph? And write a small paragraph, sum up paragraph on this whole passage. Okay, that is the first activity I want you to do. Okay, so start doing that. I will give you some time. I'm going to scroll to the next section. Right, I think I can minimize this. Here it is. Okay. You can take more time if you want. Okay, now I'm going to show you the questions. So these are the questions you have to answer. Okay, start answering the questions. And if you need more time for the summarizing activity, you can take. Okay. Okay, let's check the answers. These are the answers. For the first one, C. Second one, again C. Third one, B. Fourth one, D. And the fifth one, B. Okay, so give me a second. So we'll go through one by one and we recheck the answers. What is a business phone call? A says a phone call between two friends. No. A phone call about no particular subject. No. A phone call intended to discuss deals, agreements, and any other information of professional significance. Yes. None of the above. No. So C. Sorry. Whose job is to outline a business phone call's conversation topics? Who's the one who's outlining? Okay, who's the one who's outlining the conversation topics? What are the things I'm going to discuss? Who's going to outline when it's a phone call? The receiver? No, the receiver might not know that they will get a call. So yes, they can't outline. The company? No. The caller? Yes, right? The caller. The caller, before talking, before calling someone, should outline, okay, these are the ones I need to talk, okay, during this phone call. What is the purpose of small talk? To help business experts make deals. What is small talk? Small talk is nothing to do with business, okay? It's just having a conversation with someone. Okay, when you meet someone after a while, you can say, how are you doing, just like that. In a small talk is like not something very specific or very important. You just to kind of connect with someone, kind of can have a small talk. So to offer the caller and receiver brief break can improve their relationship. Yes. To waste companies' time and resources, no. To see who can talk at a lower volume, no. So answer B. Sorry. What type of information should be exchanged? Information that's unrelated to work? No. Information that's agreed upon at the start of a conversation. So you agree at the start of a conversation and you keep talking about that? No. Any information? No. Mutually beneficial information? Yes. Something that mutually benefits each other. Okay, so in a business setting, yes, pretty much. How should one ask a caller to repeat something? Politely and respectfully to aid the conversation and the relationship? Yes. Rudely to punish him or her for not being clear? No. One shouldn't ask a caller to repeat something? No. Quickly to save time? No. So answer 1A. Okay. Okay, so those are the answers for this comprehension passage. So we went through them. Now we will watch another video before we end the thing. Give me a second. Fine. Okay. Okay, so this is another TED Talk on vocal branding. So how you can use your voice to brand, create a brand yourself. Okay, so shape your communication image. Let's watch this and see.
Hi, it is my pleasure to be here with you all today. In those 13 syllables, you all just made judgments about me, about my socioeconomic status, my intelligence level, and whether or not you're going to sit here and listen to me for the next 10 to 12 minutes, based primarily on the perception of my voice, right? Generally, none of us likes to listen to the sound of our own voice. However, have you ever considered how others perceive you based on the sound of your voice? We've all made that phone call and listened to the person on the other end of the phone, had this image in our head of what they look like, only to find out that when we meet them in person, they don't look anything like that image we have in our head, right? Your voice is like your thumbprint or your facial features. It is unique and authentically you. Whether you are a Fortune 100 CEO, a student looking for their first job, or one of my elite vocal performers, your voice is your calling card, and it is the most important element in your personal brand. If we think about marketing and branding for a moment, when things go into a logo or a brand, we talk about fonts and colors and images that are designed to evoke a certain emotion from a target audience. And if we don't hit that target, then we go back to the marketing drawing board, we recreate that, and it's the interaction of those elements of color and logo that ultimately go into that emotional response. We take that and we'll parallel that to personal branding. And your voice is the most important element of your personal brand. It is how people perceive you. And personal brand is that thing that people say about you right when you leave the room. So what are those elements that go into voice brand? As a voice pathologist for the last 20 years, my job has been to look at what elements go into the most elite voices, what gets them hired in the professional arena, and how do we maximize those elements? It goes far beyond the words we say, right? So there's that old adage, it's not just what you say, but how you say it. And there's lots of coaches that talk about intonation and things like that. But the reality is it's the combination of certain elements that go into creating your voice brand. So let's take a look at these 5 elements. The first thing is intensity of voice. Intensity is something that we can measure. We measure intensity in decibels. Our perceptual correlate of intensity is loudness. And our biases, our cultural biases, our personal biases, our aesthetic biases of loudness influence our perception. My 13-year-old's perception of loudness is much different than my threshold of loudness. But intensity is something that's measurable. We know that there's a comfort level for intensity. If I take a simple sentence, I need you to get this done today. And the only element that I change is intensity. I need you to get this done today. All of a sudden, you all take a little step back because I'm all of a sudden perceived as being aggressive, assertive, or potentially, if I was at a sporting event, enthusiastic. If we take that same sentence and all I do is change intensity, I need you to get this done today. I'm potentially being perceived as shy or uncertain of what I'm talking about. So intensity as an element alone contributes to this overall idea of vocal brand. The second element that goes into voice brand is inflection or intonation. In music, we very rarely hear a piece that is on one note all the way through from the beginning or the end. That'd be pretty boring, right? So the intonational patterns of speech are what make it interesting. In the two extremes, we have a highly sing-songy rate where it sounds like you're talking to a 2-year-old all the time, and you're perceived as being unintelligent in what you're saying. Or we have the complete opposite, where someone totally doesn't change their tempo or their inflection at all. I need you to get this done today. They're bored, they're uninterested in what they're saying, and they're not connected to it. In today's culture, one sound of inflection that tends to be really pervasive in everything that we hear is this idea of uptalking. Everything ends with a question. There's never a statement. And what we know is that it is actually preventing people from getting jobs because they're completely unsure of themselves. The third element that goes into your brand is rate. That is how fast or how slow you talk. The average rate of our favorite TED Talkers is somewhere between 162 to 175 words per minute. I hope I fall within that range. I haven't actually measured my rate of speech, and I'm pretty sure it's sped up today, standing in front of you all right now. But average rate of speech is important. And oftentimes we'll hear people say, slow down your rate. Slowing down your rate alone is not going to change the overall vocal brand. Again, it's the interaction of the components that are going to change your voice brand. So if we have a super fast talker, I need you to get this done today, all of a sudden you feel super rushed, you're slightly agitated in what they're having to say, right? Similarly, if we slow down that rate of speech, I need you to get this done today. I'm perceived as condescending because I'm talking down to you because I'm talking so slowly. Just like in music, it's the give and take of the pace of what we do that makes it interesting. So if we take that sentence, I need you to get this done today, and within that sentence, we change up the rate or the tempo. I need you to get this done today. That makes it much more interesting for our listeners, right? The fourth element is frequency. Frequency is measured in hertz. And we know that there are normative data for men, women, and children here in the United States and abroad of what the average fundamental frequency should be for us to like their voice. If the pitch of your voice is too high, I need you to get this done today. Generally, for females, high-pitched voices are perceived as being young, albeit slightly less intelligent. If we drop the pitch of the voice, I need you to get this done today. In women, that is perceived as authoritative sometimes. If we also increase intensity with it, I need you to get this done today, we've already all of a sudden crossed that line into being aggressive. Interestingly, the average frequency of women's voices dropped after 1960. Because in the era of women's lib, when we had to come sit at the table with our male counterparts, we needed to compete vocally. So the average fundamental frequency dropped in this country after 1960. Because we know that men with lower voices make more money, father more children, and hold positions of higher leadership. And that's not just true in the human species, it's true in the animal species as well, with the exception of making more money, because I'm not sure that the animals make more money. But the males of the group with the lower voices are the leaders of the pack, and they mate more frequently, which inherently results in more children. So frequency becomes important. The fifth parameter that is interesting in our voice brand is quality. And quality can range from clarity of voice to hoarseness of voice, or a rough, raspy voice. In my elite vocal performers, uniqueness gets hired. It is not always a perfect voice, but it's an interesting voice. And sometimes that means that voice might be slightly hoarse. One of the pervasive elements of quality today is this idea of glottal fry, which is what you heard me come out doing. I need you to get this done today. We hear this all the time, especially in our upper middle class white women. It is pervasive and actually part of a social culture phenomenon that we see, thanks to some of the Kardashians. But that glottal fry is super pervasive, and what we know is happening is we now have the technology called voice biometrics, where when you call into an HR firm for a job and I say, "Hi, my name is Wendy," they run my voice through an algorithm, and they determine that features of my voice are not pleasing, and I don't even get an interview. So those 5 elements are ultimately what constitute your voice brand. So we'll take our sentence. I need you to get this done today. In a sexy voice, in light of the fact that it's Valentine's week. For females, intensity we need to drop to be perceived as sexy. Inflection, highly inflected. The rate is slowed way down. The frequency of my voice will drop, and the quality adds breathiness. I need you to get this done today. Good, you all perceive that as some version of sexy, right? At the end, our voices are made up of cartilages and ligaments and muscles. And we can train those elements of voice brand. Went forward one slide too many. We can train those individual elements of voice brand using the exercise physiology principles and motor learning principles to maximize what you have, because your voice defines you and your voice can empower you. So you want to think like a vocal athlete and maximize those elements to create your ultimate voice brand. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we come to the end of lesson 1. So this is an introduction to business communication. And in this lesson, I went through, I defined business communication for you. So I think that you are capable of defining what business communication is. And we went through communication process, communication methods, business communication specifically, and barriers for effective communication. These are the main subsections we went through in this lesson. Okay, so yes, that is the end of this lesson, and I hope you all understood it.